Hey y'all, how you doing? In this screencast, what we want to do is we want to go through and take a look at the back-end Event Watcher project and make some improvements to it. So we've been testing this over the last couple of weeks, and we did find a couple of issues with it, and there's some additions that we wanted to make it a little bit more functional. We're also going to step through and create an account and go through and test this bad boy out a bit more. So we do have this project up on GitHub. It is the Web3 Event Watcher D project. It's a super simple project right now, as you saw us build it in previous episodes. But we want to make a couple of small improvements. And I also want to go ahead and set it up just on a different machine. So I'm here on my Windows machine, and I'm going to go ahead and clone down the project. So I'm going to go to our code here and copy the address. And I'm actually going to go into the Ubuntu application here on my Windows machine. So I'm on Windows, but I'm in Linux. Cool. So I'm just going to go into my lab directory and I'm going to just clone this down. And we should now have our project locally. Awesome. All right. So let's go ahead and open up this code. And a couple of things we need to do first. We do need to do npm install here to get all of our dependencies going on. And once we have that installed, or actually while that's going, we can go ahead and create a .env file, which is going to house our alchemy key. So we can go ahead and put our alchemy key in here. ALCEMY. I did not spell that right. Alchemy API key equals, and we'll put our API key here. You can put your API key there. And then we also need a service account file for our Firebase authentication. So this is going to be all that information there. I'm actually going to go ahead and pull this to a separate screen and do that there, because this is information that you do not want to share with the internet publicly, right? So now this is going to go ahead and read all of that information. So now at this point, we should be able to run the application in its current state, and we can go ahead and give that a shot and say node index. And there we go. We are reading. We do have one contract watcher in our database right now, and it is listening for events. I'm going to kill that because we don't want to start firing events off. So let's take a look at our program so far. We are doing a really simple implementation here, right? If we go down to the bottom here, where we're reading the listeners from our Firebase database, we're then setting up an array of listeners, and we're looping through that array and then instantiating contracts using the Web3.js library. And then we watch for changes in the Firebase database. And whenever we get changes, we're going ahead and we're actually rebuilding the entire list of listeners. So this isn't an extremely efficient way to do it, but it does work for what we're doing right now. And I hope to be able to improve this much more in the future as we get more and more event listeners in our system. So a couple of issues did arise as we were testing it. The first was this fetch is not properly listening for errors. So whenever there was a bad fetch, it actually failed. And that's not good, right? We want to be able to, we need to be able to catch these errors. So quite simply, we need to catch here, right? Because we're doing async and await, we do need to put a .catch here, and then we can catch our error. And I'm just going to go ahead and console.log that for now. So that right there is a pretty large improvement, because it's going to now not crash the entire program if we get a bad URL fed into the system. Now we still need to do URL, all of the string cleaning and all that type of stuff to make sure that we actually have a valid URL. But for now, we're going to go ahead and catch those errors. Now, the second piece was we want to be able to actually get a full transaction here. One of the downsides of what we're doing is we only get event data, right? Because we're listening for events. So we want to be able to add the full transaction to the information that we're posting out. Right now, we're just posting the event, the actual specifically the indexed logs of that event. So whatever the event is, we're going ahead and posting the indexes. And remember, in Ethereum, you can have up to 4 indexed values per event. And we're also including the block number. So we were testing this a bit and we're like, hey, it would make sense if we had the full transaction. Luckily, we can get that pretty easily because the event does have a transaction hash value on the object. So what we could do here is we could go ahead and show the event transaction hash, right? Just to see it. And this is exactly what it would look like. So we can say event.transaction hash. Now, if we want to go ahead and grab that transaction, we can create a new variable here, and we can use this web3.eth get transaction and then pass to it the event.transaction hash. Now, once this runs, this transaction object is going to be chock full of all of the information in the transaction. And now, if we wanted to go ahead and include that in the post that we do, all we have to do is go down here and say, comma, TX. And boom, now the transaction is included in a TX key within this JSON string that we go ahead and post out to whatever URL we've configured. Probably also makes sense. Now the transaction is going to have the block number. Oh, we also have the block number in the event, but we can use the block number to get the block, which actually has the date and time in it. So we could grab the date and time. Somebody did mention that in a comment on YouTube. How do we do that? So you could do it that way. We also capture the time that we receive the event. So here we do have the UTC time here. So we can go ahead and just throw that in the response as well. And now we could say, well, we'll say now UTC for now. We'll just keep it timestamp. That's cool. That's a good way to name it, right? Instead of saying .now UTC. So that will include now the transaction and the timestamp. Awesome. So I think that is a nice little improvement right there. The third thing was a problem that we hit when we were deleting contract listeners from the system. They were removing from the array when we listened for events and we watched for changes. We were resetting the array, but the actual subscription over the WebSocket did not go away. So we were still getting the events because we instantiated this contract outside of the scope of that array. So we were playing around with this a little bit and trying to think about ways to do this. And it turns out that there is a pretty simple way to just completely unsubscribe from all of the subscriptions we have in the system. So all we need to do here is we can use the Web3 API here, web3.eth specifically, and say clear subscriptions. And what this is going to do is this is going to now take any subscriptions we have and just remove them. So now we can be assured that, hey, that actually did delete from the system, and we're not going to continuously get results when we don't want them. So I think those are the 3 pretty big improvements that we can make here. I don't think there's any other ones right now, but I would be interested in any input that you guys have. If you go and test this, we do have a video coming out soon where we are integrating this with other applications, so you can kind of see a little bit more of a real world example of what we can use an application like this for. But what I'd like to do before we end today is just go ahead and let's test this bad boy out. Let's see if it works. So I'm going to go back to here. I'm going to say node index, and we already have an event here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here. I'm going to create a new account. So I'm going to say, and we do have this up on Netlify. So I'm going to go ahead and post a link to this in this video. And this is super alpha right now, right? So expect some bugs if you hit them. But if you do hit them, you do test this, that is awesome. Please let us know in the comments below. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new account. Awesome. So now I want to let's listen to USD. Listen to USDT. This has a ton of transactions all the time. and go here, put that in here. And we should go out there and get our, ooh, this is taking a while to get the, okay. We're going to listen to the transfer event, and I'm going to use request bin again. I'm just going to go ahead and create a request bin here so we can see this. I'll copy this URL, and we're going to post it right here and start listening. And then boom. Now our backend should have, yes, it found a change, and now we are listening on 2 contracts. We have one in the system already, and now we have this, and we're listening for transfer events. Now, I would expect that we get a transfer event pretty quickly here because transfers are happening in USDT pretty frequently. So let's see what happens. Oh, you know what, though? We're not getting a subscription. So I have a feeling that this is not working because I would expect us to get a subscription ID once this is connected. So I have a feeling that, you know what the problem is? We have a typo in our URL to Alchemy in here. That's not going to work. So we have to spell Alchemy right. All right. So now with that in place, we should be able to run this bad boy. And there we go. Now we're getting subscriptions. So now we have a subscription, and I would expect that we see some events fire pretty quickly here. There we go. We've got some, what's this saying? Oh, fetch. I think my node version's a little, it's saying fetch is experimental here. That's fine. So let's see. If we go here, boom, we are getting, well, we're getting them pretty quickly here. So look at that. So we're getting the events. Here's our body. Here's the event. So this is going to have the indexed values, both indexed by integer and by a string. And then we have our full transaction. So this is going to have all the information for a transaction. You have your from, you have the gas price, inputs, all the information that you would see in a transaction. So it's pretty detailed here. Awesome. All right, great. So I'm going to go ahead and commit this back up to GitHub, and I'll include a link to the front end here. And yeah, happy hacking. Awesome. Thanks.